The Mac and Pete Project.
So I was recently reading Tolkien, and it reminded me of how many great film speeches that there are out there. And everybody on YouTube has like a top 10 or top five. And I thought, well, Pete, why don't we do a top list of what film speeches we just think are the balls, that the bee's knees, the best ever? So
I think I came up with about six, and we have no idea what the other person picked, so maybe we have some overlap.
we could.
I have some eclectic picks that I don't think you're even gonna even have thought of, but I'm pretty sure I know a few that you picked. But
I'm going to say that I think you probably know, and I actually had to go back for this one because I kind of wanted to surprise you a little bit and not pick the one that I think that you're thinking of.
okay, because I heard you enough times in high school.
Yeah. I am going to say that it's my honorable mention. It is not in, okay? And there's a reason for that. So, but let's start off with mine is the Germans bombing Pearl Harbor, Jim Belushi in Animal House.
Hey! What's this lying around shit? Well, what the hell is supposed to do, you moron?
So I don't know if you remember the scene, but Jim Belushi's standing there, and they were on double secret probation, and it's goofy, it's funny, but he's going through and he's yelling and screaming. He goes, "And did the Americans give up when Germans bombed Pearl Harbor? No!" And
Was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor? Hell no!
German? Forget it, he's rolling.
oh, don't bother him, he's on a roll. And it was one of those where it was goofy and funny, but you could imagine a guy like that in real life actually giving that speech. Like you could imagine, because it was, you could feel he wanted, let's do this, let's win. But it you couldn't help laugh half the way through it. But
so I haven't seen Animal House in its entirety. The only thing I know is the guitar being smashed.
From Star Trek.
Yes.
I guess you're gonna have to put that on your list.
Let's go!
So I actually have two movies from the 1940s on this list.
Okay.
The first one I have is Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
I was ready to tell you that a certain man in my state, a Mr. James Taylor, wanted to put through this dam for his own profit. A man who controls a political machine.
Okay.
Are you familiar with that one?
I've seen it, but not a very long time.
Okay. So I can't remember if it was before or after It's a Wonderful Life, but it was I think it was after, because it would be working with Frank Capra again and Jimmy Stewart, and essentially Jimmy Stewart gets thrusted into the United States Senate because back in those days, when a senator died, the governor appointed a replacement, which I think might still be true.
I think so, until they can have another election.
So, and it turns out he's just as nicest, most what do you want to call it? Most genuine person you'll ever meet, and is so doesn't lets people take advantage of him because he's gullible. Not what's the word I'm looking for? Not gullible. It's naive and innocent. And basically, he finds corruption in the Senate over a bill he was sponsoring, and he's basically going to use the filibuster to expose the corruption in the Senate.
And this same man, Mr. James Taylor, came down here and offered me a seat in this Senate for the next 20 years if I voted for a dam that he knew and I knew was a fraud. But if I dared to open my mouth against that dam, he promised to break me in two. All right, I got up here and I started to open my mouth, and the long and powerful arm of Mr. James Taylor reached into this sacred chamber and grabbed me by the scruff of the neck.
So yeah, just one of my favorites from college film class.
Well, you're reaching back there. I mean, I think probably the oldest one I've got on my list is like 1970.
Okay.
But you reached back there a little bit. I almost went back a little further, but I had a sneaky suspicion that you were going to, so I thought that I was gonna go a different route with mine. And you'll find out by my next one what kind of route that I'm going to. So this one's the speech of "We're Mutants" by Bill Murray in Stripes.
We're all very different people. We're not Watusi. We're not Spartans. We're Americans.
Oh boy.
So do you remember Stripes, or have you seen it?
Just vague memories of it being on while my dad was watching it.
So Bill Murray is this taxi driver, and his life is going nowhere. And him and Harold Ramis decide we need to change, we got to do something, so they join the army. So in the midst of joining the army, their sergeant who's training them goes through an accident, and now he can't continue their training, which is odd. You think they could just assign another sergeant. Well, the captain wants to just get rid of all of these guys and just get them out of the army. So in the midst of all this, it's graduation day, and they're sitting around, and John Candy's in the film also, and Bill Murray's character's name's Winger, which is great. So he stands up and he's going, "Come on, guys, we're Americans," and he goes through this big speech. "We're mutants," and he's trying to get these, and out of all, Bill Murray knocks this one out of the park, in my opinion. He goes for this semi-action adventure comedy. He kind of lays it on there, and he stirs these guys into, we're going to march down there, and we're going to show them up right in the middle of the field, and by golly, he does it. And it was always one that I've always enjoyed watching.
We're mutants. There's something wrong with us. Something very, very wrong with us. Something seriously wrong with us.
Oddly enough, when I was making the list for today, 40 years ago yesterday was when Stripes was in theaters.
Oh, wow.
So it was like, I think it was kind of meant to be that it went on my list.
But there is one thing that we all have in common. We were all stupid enough to enlist in the Army.
What do you got, Pete?
Next one, shifting genres. I'm going with Rudy.
Okay.
Hey. What you doing here? Don't you have practice?
Not anymore, I quit.
And most specifically, speech towards the, I want to say 3/4 point of the movie.
Yeah, I was going to say the beginning of the third act.
With the groundskeeper, when he decides, oh, I've been on this team for 2 years, I'm still not able to dress, and I wanted to run out of that tunnel for my old man. And basically he gives him a good talking to and being like, if you can't see the success and prove yourself to yourself, it's never going to happen. You don't have to be, you don't have to prove yourself to anyone but your own.
Run out of that tunnel for my dad. To prove to everyone that I worked.
What?
That I was somebody.
Oh, you are so full of crap.
But yeah, that's just one of my movies from '90s. End up watching in middle school so many times. And
yeah, I was going to say that was one that was played on a frequent basis.
In this lifetime, you don't have to prove nothing to nobody except yourself. And after what you've gone through, if you haven't done that by now, It ain't gonna never happen.
This is probably on your list somewhere. This was the one that I thought we were going to share, and this is a tie for me.
Okay.
So I'm going to start with the one that I think that we have in common. So it would be Americans Love Winners, George C. Scott Patton.
Yep, this is my movie where I have basically 3 different monologues.
I kind of knew that was gonna, so that's why I said it's a tie for me.
All this stuff you heard about America not wanting to fight, wanting to stay out of the war, is a lot of horse dung. Americans traditionally love to fight.
Okay.
And then here comes the one that you probably guessed. Mel Gibson, Freedom, Braveheart.
Yes.
Sons of Scotland, I am William Wallace.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, this was my tie.
you want to talk about Braveheart for a little bit?
Sure. Twist my arm. So as Pete well knows, that when we were in high school, we had, at the time, there was a mandate by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that you needed to have a senior project to do. And my senior project was to do a segmented parts of films like shorts. Well, I picked 2 scenes from Braveheart to do. And of course, the speech of freedom, and my honorable mention, which I'll talk about later, which I think is actually better than the speech itself.
Do you still have
Braveheart.
footage of it?
Say again?
Do you still have footage of the project?
I might. My mother probably has it.
Because I think we should show some of that, because your dad had some killer lines in there.
Well, you mean the his lovely Scottish accent where he sounds like Sylvester from Sylvester and Tweety? You mean that one? We were one and we were with. Yeah. For some reason, maybe I won't find that. But Braveheart is, of course, about a Scottish folk hero in the 1300s. Now, a lot of people in the Scottish diaspora, the immigrants who come to Canada, the U.S. and Australia, they love this movie. Why? Because it's purely fictionalized fantasy of history. There's a lot of inaccuracies, like the fight of Falkirk was Falkirk Bridge, but Falkirk was done on a field, not on a bridge. So there's a lot of historical discrepancies. The film, if you look at it from a romantic standpoint, where you're romanticizing about Scottish culture, yeah, I mean, they didn't even have kilts until you're looking at the 1600s at the earliest from the historical, and of course all the guys are dressed in kilts. So I mean, there's a lot of and if you want to look into that, please do. It's rather interesting. But when it comes to, is it a great movie about Scottish culture? Without a doubt. One of the best, without a doubt. And of course, the freedom speech has been in popular culture to the point where I even think that there's been so many parodies done for it. There was like I think it was called The Nice Guy, who was a football movie where he dressed up and rode a horse, where he was trying to get all the people at a football game, and he painted himself with Wade paint, and he, freedom, he's screaming and yelling. So, yeah, this is one of Mac's favorite films and speeches.
That they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
So as Mac has already said, on his list and my list is Patton, which is funny because this is actually the very next one on my list. So it lines up perfectly.
Win-win.
So there's actually 3 speeches or monologues I want to talk about. One's actually a soliloquy, but the first one that I want to talk about is the scene in Sicily where he's in the Jeep and he has him pull over and he kind of gives a speech on reincarnation and how he was.
Okay, I remember that one, and that is a good one.
Hold it. Turn right here.
Sir, the battlefield is straight ahead.
Please don't argue with me, Sergeant. I can smell a battlefield.
He was out here just yesterday, George.
It's over there. Turn right, damn it.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, this guy's a modern man, and you don't know if he's sincere or not, or you actually think he actually thinks he is reincarnated from ancient times.
Yeah, in the scene, it's played out so well because if I remember, he's talking to the driver at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And he has this moment because Patton was known, the historic Patton was known to exaggerate to get what he wanted, especially with Eisenhower. And you saw that a little bit, but you didn't know at this point. The way, and especially the way George C. Scott acted it, you didn't know whether he was sincere, as you said, or whether he was just blowing off steam. I don't know any other way to put it, but you're right. And it's a great scene.
2,000 years ago. I was here.
And just briefly, the second one I wanted to discuss was basically the end of the movie. All glory is fleeting. Just a nice little cautionary tale of can this man live without war?
For over 1,000 years, Roman conquerors returning from the wars enjoyed the honor of a triumph, a tumultuous parade.
The real-life Patton, I believe, was vocally about engaging the Russians or the Soviets immediately after World War II because in his mind, he said he thought that war would be inevitable, and now's the time to do it now. But, go ahead.
I think that if you take historic for context, the real Patton he found it very difficult to be at peace, as you could see when he was, whether he believed it or not that he was reincarnated. So to the point where he was so attached to it from whether he was incarnated or reincarnated or not. And I am gratified to know that history didn't play itself out where we didn't go to war with Russia, Soviet Union. And I think that had to do with the fear of communism is probably where that stemmed from. So, and the film did capture that feeling towards the end as the speech also very well as the monologue encapsulated.
So, and lastly, probably the most famous speech of the movie that everyone talks about, or sets the tone perfect for the movie, is the big speech in front of the oversized flag in an auditorium that doesn't exist. Everything's just blown out of proportion, and you pretty much have the sense that this is Patton's vision of how he presents himself in front of his men, because there's no flag that big in any auditorium, and it's just purely there for to explain basically how he's going to create the best army he can and win the war.
You also get from the scene and the setting of how Patton perceives America and how he wants to project American power throughout his campaign, and not just the way in which he molds the Third Army.
Americans traditionally love to fight. All real Americans love the sting of battle.
My next film is actually, I guess this is the first of 2 graphic novels converted to film for me. really surprised I didn't have any comic book movies, but those don't really have many long monologues or anything.
Not really, no.
So my first one here is 300.
Remember us.
The
Okay.
closing scene of basically the I'm gonna just call him the Bard. I don't remember his name. One of the few surviving Spartans from the Battle of Thermopylae, and basically, giving the battle cry for the upcoming battle. I forget what battle's at the end of the movie, but it's basically all the Spartans, or all of Greece, coming up to take on the Persian army.
But from free Greek to free Greek, the word was spread.
That's probably the only Zack Snyder movie I like, just because it has such a great artistic style.
Yes, it does. There's no movie out there like it.
To this day, I'm still split on Watchmen, if I like it or not.
I see that.
But then all his Superman stuff, I just totally hate.
Tell us how you really feel, Pete.
Oh, yeah, I will.
To Leonidas and the brave 300, to victory!
All right. What's your next one?
So, this will be my second Bill Murray speech, which I didn't realize how much I liked this one. But this is the ending speech from the film Scrooged, which is a modern, 1980s interpretation of Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol. And it's a long one.
Oh, I got it. Holy shit, that's Frank Cross. He's drunk.
He's nuts. He's finished.
Shut up! Don't touch that dial and stay out!
It takes the joy of that time of year, that peace, the love, the giving, whether you're a Christian, you're a Druid, or a Jew, or a Muslim. For some reason, a lot of faiths have, in that time, whether you're on a 12-month calendar or a 13-month calendar, a lunar or celestial, for some reason, that time of year, we all culminate and we all have something in common. And this movie kind of takes it funny and loving, but Bill Murray can actually, when he wants to, takes a serious topic and the humor in life and takes your emotion and goes, wow. I mean, even at the end, he gets a little tear, and I don't know if that was on purpose or he really felt that at the end, but it was a good tearjerker speech, and it made you feel that love of that time of year, and I loved it.
What kind of a rat bastard idiot would schedule a live show on a Christmas Eve?
Only you, Frank.
A week ago, I'd have kicked your butt right out of the building.
So my second graphic novel turned movie, I believe it's a graphic novel, is V for Vendetta.
It is.
I remember watching this actually in your bedroom, like freshman year of college, one of the weekends I came home. It was the first time we watched it.
Yeah. That's when that came out. Holy, that's a long time ago. I didn't realize that.
So 2006, like Natalie Portman just got done doing Star Wars, and
We know how much you love Natalie Portman.
she needs a rebound. But yeah, a lot of great speeches in that. There's the little monologue with the alliteration of the word V, or the letter V, excuse me.
Letter V, yeah.
But I think the most important speech of the movie is when he commandeers the state television network.
Good evening, London. Allow me first to apologize for this emergency channel.
And basically tells everyone there's something wrong with the government and that he blew up the Old Bailey, and he wants everyone to stand with him next year on November the 5th in front of Parliament. To do what? I don't know. yeah, it's a great a speech against tyranny in a dystopian future, Orwellian, probably the definition of an Orwellian future.
Yes.
I thought we could mark this November the 5th, a day that is sadly no longer remembered, by taking some time out of our daily lives to sit down and have a little chat.
I actually think it's ironic that a few entries so far on our list have actors who were used in Lord of the Rings, because I find that when they talk, like V for Vendetta, Hugo Weaver, he has a very poetic way of speaking. You just mentioned 300, and I'm pretty sure that he did Faramir, the same actor. They have people who do film speeches well have that Shakespearean, that fire in your belly that can touch everyone. And I think that V for Vendetta, especially when you have such a material like tyranny, when you're fighting against something that's taking away your freedom, that's one of the biggest catalysts for that.
Then I ask you to stand beside me 1 year from tonight, outside the gates of Parliament, and together we shall give them a 5th of November that shall never, ever be forgotten.
Which is going to lead me into my next film, which I think if Admiral Robb was here, he would agree, and that would be the President's speech in Independence Day, Bill Pullman.
In less than an hour, aircraft from here will join others from around the world. And you will be launching the largest aerial battle in the history of mankind.
I absolutely hate that movie, but
Okay, I dislike the movie. Brent Spiner in it. I hate it. The only saving grace is that I could literally just watch that speech.
Yeah.
Because out of the whole, that is one of those. It was a very American speech.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then the segue into, we're no longer Americans. It's no longer an American holiday. It is a day when we said with one voice, I love that speech. And
I mean, it's a great speech. It's just, a lot of people love that movie, and I think it's a really stupid movie.
It's a terrible movie. It's one, and I don't know why you have such a, I don't know, maybe one day when they were writing, they just, hey, I'm going to write the speech first. And then all of a sudden the rest was just crap. I don't know.
I don't think so. I think the speech was just a byproduct, and, we can do a whole episode on why I hate Independence Day.
Well, I love the speech.
We're going to live on. We're going to survive. Today, we celebrate our Independence Day.
All right. Well, what's the next movie on your list?
This probably is going to surprise you.
Okay.
So this is St. Crispin's Day, but performed by Kenneth Branagh in Henry V.
What's he that wishes so? My cousin Westmoreland? No, my fair cousin. If we are marked to die, we are enough to do our country loss.
And I've talked about this before when we've talked, especially during our TNG retrospective, is I have dyslexia. So reading was always a big challenge for me. Shakespeare was one of those that I could actually read because of the way in which he wrote. So one of the speeches that, and I'm not a very imaginative person when it comes to reading. So when I was reading it, I actually felt, but when I see Kenneth Branagh doing it, and this man, I think he was born, like he was a reincarnation of Shakespeare, because the way that he does it, anything that he does, his Much Ado About Nothing, a good one to watch. But when he does Henry V, by golly, it's especially there, and we can talk about this later. And Patton does this, especially in his monologues, when there's a great symphonic background that doesn't overpower the dialogue, but it's almost this harmonious relationship as you go through the scene.
Mm-hmm.
Then add a great cinematic. You're just purely blown away by this. So,
yeah, and especially like I'm more familiar with Patton, like the echoing trumpets. Well, Patton speaking.
It was here.
exactly. And that also plays a dynamic when he's talking about his reincarnation in Patton. So you're getting that this is an echo from the past. This is not just my memory. This is a memory from bygone, from lives already lived. And that's a very powerful message when you're listening to it.
And hold their manhood's chief, whiles any speaks that fought with us upon St. Crispin's Day!
All right, so I think we're down to our final one, but before we mention that, I think we want to do some honorable mentions that didn't make the list.
Yeah, and I'll do mine first. So the reason I did it, I tried to stay away from monologues or like one-liners that just motivated you. And the biggest one for me was the ending of Braveheart, which I thought was better than the speech itself, the freedom speech. And at the end was as Angus McFadden, he played King Robert the Bruce. Now, at the end, of course, William Wallace isn't there. I won't spoil the movie because I'm known for doing spoilers. But he's not there for some reason.
You realize that the movie's been out for over 20 years.
I usually say that, and you always bust my chops like, full spoiler. Okay, and meanwhile, William Wallace has been dead for thousands of years. Who knows? Well, not 1,000, but close to it.
100.
Anyway, so all this is built up, and you had this feeling because he was the main character throughout, and you were more charged. And I just love the way that the music goes along with the monologue, and he throws the sword, and you hear the bagpipes, and it hits the crescendo, and it's just, and you see them charge. I loved it. That was more inspirational to me at the end than the actual freedom speech was in the middle. So that was why it was my honorable mention, because it wasn't actually a speech. So.
My honorable mentions goes to Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, Theoden's speech, and Aragorn's speech at the Black Gates. So.
Pete, you want to know what my number one is?
Go ahead.
My number one is Theoden in Return of the King. Apparently there's either a film I'm thinking of, or I just really enjoy that more. Now see, I do believe the Aragorn speech was good, but there wasn't like an action that followed it. They just kind of sat there and then all of a sudden they thought Frodo was dead, and Frodo, you know, it wasn't, the speech got him riled, but there wasn't action after it. So the reason I loved Theoden, and the other thing was because the reason I wanted to do this list, that's the dialogue from the book is almost exactly what they did in the film. So I like it when they do that. but the action leading up after it, especially with the guy on the horse, looks like George Carlin with a helmet. He's really into riding, you know, and he's gunning it. I love the build up. I love the energy. I love the horns. Everything about it just hit every tone. And as I've told you before, did I feel the hair going up on my neck? And did I feel like, we're going to do this? Yes. That's why it's my number one and not an honorable mention. Yep.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
So what made your number one above those two?
Feels, I don't think it's going to be anticlimactic, but what I chose for number one is actually from the 1940s again.
Okay.
By Charlie Chaplin, The Great Dictator.
Okay. I don't think that's anticlimactic. It's just a different feel. That's all how I would say it. It's a different feel.
So, I mean, this speech
I don't want
just
to be an emperor. That's not
makes you feel like there's good in the world.
rule or conquer anyone.
Yeah.
People wanting to do what's best for everyone. And it's like after watching it, it's like, how could you not feel good? It does feel a little bit awkward now because it feels like you shouldn't be parodying Hitler, which we know Mel Brooks has done.
Several times.
But also at the same time, it doesn't help that Charlie Chaplin shares a resemblance. But this was also, actually, I misspoke. This isn't the 40s. This is actually in the 30s. Because this is this is done during the escalation of the Germany's military and basically trying to show what a government like this is capable of, and basically before, you know, all the war crimes were public knowledge. So because I think they've spoken, or I think Charlie Chaplin has spoken, if they knew about the Holocaust, they probably would not have done this. I'm not 100% on that.
Isn't that funny, Pete, that 30 years before the Civil Rights Movement, somebody was talking the same way that Dr. Martin Luther King did. And 90 years ago, someone was talking about diversity and inclusion the way that it should be, and talking about systemic racism before it was even a word, even a definition 90 years ago.
Yeah.
That's amazing to me that, and you picked a film that not a lot of people know about. You picked a film
and
almost forgotten.
What is almost sad to me is almost 90 years old this clip is, and it could have been spoken yesterday.
Yes.
Of the problems we still have with greed and people treating each other terribly in a broken system that they thought was broken in the 1940s and is still broken today.
And I think that the problem is we're so focused on people. Like when somebody says the system's broken, they think that we're saying that the people are broken. No, we're saying that the system was designed by people. It was designed broken. We need to fix the system. Half the people I know, they're not racist. They're not anything. But they're perpetuating a system that's broken. And their bias towards the system is what's perpetuating that systemic racism. And that's what I don't think that they truly understand. And a movie like that, if it was, like you said, if it was spoken yesterday, maybe it would have hit a lot more, you know, maybe it would have reached a lot more people, you know. Not to say that there isn't racism still out there. You know, that's not it either. But I think that, especially with In the Dictator, what they were talking about is the system itself. And that's the issue.
I think this is going to be the first of many list videos we're going to do.
Yeah, I think so too. I really enjoyed it. I hope you did too.
So, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.